It is the morning sports desk for Tuesday, January 30th. My name is CJ Baumgartner, Corey Tackman, my co-host. And Corey, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's just jump right into our broadcast schedule for tonight. It is Wadena Deer Creek going west along Highway 10 to take on the Perham Yellow Jackets, a Section 8 AA boys basketball game. Wadena Deer Creek heading into this matchup has won 6 games in a row, and they're now going on the road to try and see if they can make it 7 against a section opponent in Perham. If you're looking at the Yellow Jackets on the season, they're 4-11, 0-5 in the section, 2-5 in the Heart of Lakes Conference, 1-5 on the road, although 3-5 at the Hive in Perham. Their last win was a 63-52 win against Frazee on January 16th. They lost to Pelican Rapids and DGF on the schedule before this one as they take on the Wolverines. This will be their first home game for Perham since on the 13th when they played Cass Lake Bena and lost 73-63. So that's where the schedule looks like for them. For the Wolverines, they are 11-3 on the season, 2-1 in 8 AA, 8-1 in the Park Region Conference, 3-3 on the road, 7-0 on their home floor. And if we take a peek into the Section 8 AA boys basketball standings for a second here, we can kind of see where things shake out with the Yellow Jackets and the Wolverines for where they're at. Currently, Wadena Deer Creek is sitting as the 5 seed in Section 8 AA with a QRF of about 61.6. DGF is in 4th, Barnesville 3rd, Park Rapids area 2nd, and Pelican Rapids in at the top spot. After Wadena Deer Creek at 6, it's East Grand Forks, then Holly at 7, Roseau at 8, Perham at 9, Warroad at 10, Monaga at 11, Thief River Falls at 12, and Crookston is at 13 in the Section 8 AA standing. So Perham right now with a QRF of 47, the Wolverines with a QRF of 61.6. Looking like it should be a pretty good matchup tonight, obviously, with 2 teams in close proximity. It's a rivalry. They've had rivalries in other sports. So it should be a good one at the Hive tonight.
Yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. It's just going to be nice, I think, for each of these teams as we approach February to start playing some of these section tournament games and or teams that are within the section. Things are a little different, especially from the Wadena Deer Creek standpoint, right? A lot of their conference is against single A opponents. So to play these non-conference games against double A teams and there is a little bit of a difference. So to get their feet wet and start planning and preparing for that is going to be really important because of that, even though, Perham in a bit of an adjustment year, brand new first-year head coach in Perham. He's not a first-year coach overall, but it's his first year in Perham. Obviously some roster turnover, but, they play in a double A primary conference in the Heart of Lakes. So I suspect this game is probably going to be a fairly competitive basketball game, at least going in. Plus, it's at the Hive, and that's just not an easy place to. It's an overwhelming place to show up to, even though they've all been there a bunch. It's a pretty dynamic gymnasium, and I think just walking in there sometimes is enough to make you go, "Whoa!" You have to try a little extra hard to refocus,
Right, exactly. So it should be a fun one. It's got a 7:15 pregame, a 7:30 tip-off from the Hive in Perham. You can listen tonight on 101.7 and AM 920 KWAD. Should be a good one. Let's go into our state sports, CJ, Corey, the Minnesota Timberwolves.
CJ, really quickly, WadenaRadio.com/KWAD also.
Oh, we got that going. All right. Perfect. So you can listen on the internet as well, the World Wide Web, WadenaRadio.com/KWAD. Now, as we look into our Timberwolves and the state sports, Corey, we talked a lot on the sports desk yesterday about how this team is a different basketball team with Mike Conley, and he's been hurt and they haven't been playing good basketball. And so, of course, the Timberwolves decide to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road without Mike Conley beating the team that was chasing them in the Western Conference, and the Wolves are once again back in sole possession of the Western Conference.
I don't know. Does Oklahoma City have anything funky going on right now? Do they have guys out? I know SGA
Well, they just
played.
lost to Detroit.
I'm saying, like, as far as injuries, like, is Chet playing? Is Giddey playing? Do
Yeah.
they have their guys? Because this game was
Everybody's
won in
playing.
Oklahoma City. That's a really nice win. Everything we said about the Timberwolves not being mature and not being able to handle it without Mike Conley on the road was immediately proven false. I don't know what, 12 hours, not even 8 hours after we recorded yesterday's podcast.
The old broadcaster's jinx.
Mike Conley did not play, and the Timberwolves got a tough fought victory on the road against a really good team.
Right.
Who would have guessed? We got it wrong. We got it wrong once again. Who could have guessed?
Who could have guessed? It's a really good win for the Wolves. They get back into first place. And Corey, I mean, with all the uncertainty in this season for the Timberwolves, you know, it's going to be February in 2 days, and your Minnesota Timberwolves are one of the top teams in the NBA and would be a 1 seed in the NBA playoffs if the season ended on February 1st. And there's only a couple more months left of the season after that. I'm not saying they're going to hang on and be number 1. Denver is sneakily moved up on Oklahoma City. They're like a game behind the Wolves or a half game behind Minnesota. And Denver, of course, is a pros team. They're going to be hanging around till the very end. But, I mean, no matter what happens so far, Wolves are with house money right now. They're going to be a top 4 team in the NBA when the postseason starts. And it's just been a fun ride, and it's fun that we get to see it kind of continue so far. It's been a little bumpy, but the wheels haven't fallen off this wagon yet.
It's only been bumpy because they're in first place, and you feel like you have to nitpick. Like all the complaints about the Timberwolves are nitpicks. They're not like major concerns. They don't suck at basketball. They have some things that if they could fix, they might be dynamite, but they're already really good.
Exactly. So we'll talk more about kind of their needs and things as that gets closer and the trade deadline gets closer and we have some more news. But speaking of trades, the Minnesota Twins, Corey, they finally did something. It's worth the wait, I guess, because it's a big one. They make a major transaction in trading the longest tenured Twin and who most have considered the most underrated Twin of the Target Field era, Jorge Polanco, which are you really the most underrated Twin if everybody says how you're underrated?
It's a fair question. It's going to be a bummer to see him go. He's not only the longest tenured, pretty darn good at baseball over that time too.
Right. You know, he's the I think Caleb Thielbar counts, but if we're talking continuous run, Jorge Polanco is one of the last Twins who played for Gardy.
He's an old man now, huh?
He is. He's 30. I mean, I guess technically Willie Castro because he played for Gardy in Detroit. That might be the loophole in this thing. But anyway, so Jorge Polanco, he signed with the Twins at age 16 out of the Dominican Republic, I believe, and he has been with the team ever since. He was signed in the same international free agent class as Max Kepler and Miguel Sano, and he worked his way throughout the organization, made his debut in 2014, up and down the next few years, officially established himself in 2017, and has been he was an all-star starter in 2019. So, I mean, everything about Jorge Polanco has just been solid. His best season wasn't even probably 2019. 2021 was probably his best season. And I mean, he's just been so good for his entire Twins career. He's just been a constant force. He's never been like the top player on your team, or at least you never feel like it. But all of a sudden you look at the end of the season and he's amassed 22 home runs with like a 270 average and an OPS of like 820. Like he's just a guy who all of a sudden at the end of every year is like, whoa, this guy was super productive for our team. And, you know, the defense wasn't necessarily strong suit, but moving over to second base masks that a lot. And overall, it's just tough to see Jorge Polanco go. It's going to be awful weird seeing him in a Mariners uniform. So, I mean, but let's be honest. We all knew that this trade was coming for Jorge Polanco. And we'll get to kind of that in a second, but there was just a logjam of infielders, and Polanco, he was making $10.5 million this year. There was a club option for $12 million the next season. And there was a lot of young players who were there, and Jorge Polanco he was Iron Man through the first half of his career, but so far in the last few years, that's kind of been catching up with him a little bit, and the bumps and bruises and missing time here and there. It was just time to move on, and Jorge Polanco is going to go to a team in Seattle that needs position players and good hitters. But the official trade now for Jorge Polanco in the deal, the Twins get Justin Topa, who is a reliever, major league reliever, and he's making like $1.25 million this year. He's going to be under team control for 2025 and 2026. Relatively cheap as well. He had a career year last year with an ERA of 2.69. And if that stays pace, he's going to be one of the Twins' more high leverage relievers, kind of in a Griffin Jacks, I'm trying to think, Brock Stewart kind of role on this Twins team. Anthony DeSclafani, I'm probably butchering that last name. He pitched for the Giants. He got traded from the Giants to the Mariners this offseason, now from the Mariners to the Twins. The interesting part about DeSclafani getting traded, however you pronounce it, getting traded, is that the Mariners weren't even paying his full salary. The Giants were paying half of his salary, and the Mariners are paying another chunk of his salary. So the Twins are only paying like $3 million, $4 million for a starting pitcher who I would say, is a 5 or 6 starter on this current Twins rotation. It's more for rotation depth. And on a team last season for the Twins, that even though the rotation was pretty darn healthy, all things considered, they still started 10 different starting pitchers throughout the course of a season. You're going to need guys. They have a guy who at least is back-end rotation depth, just as much as every team needs a 9-hitter. Every team does need like a veteran guy in the back part of your rotation, and the Twins have that with DeSclafani. And then the big piece in this trade was a minor leaguer, a 19, 20-year-old kid in Gabriel Gonzalez, an outfielder from Venezuela, I believe. Big power hitting prospect, a boomer bust type of prospect from what I've read, but is a guy that was the Mariners' 3rd best prospect and a top 100 prospect in the world, and slots in, according to MLB Pipeline, as the Twins' 4th best prospect behind Walker Jenkins, Brooks Lee, and Emmanuel Rodriguez. And it reshuffles the farm system a little bit. It gives you a guy, the Twins farm system is aging a little bit. Brooks Lee is a guy, Emmanuel Rodriguez, and even guys like Junior Severino are all guys who are the top part of your farm system that are going to make their big league debuts pretty quickly. So you need kind of another young prospect to kind of have towards the top of your farm system if you maybe need to make a trade later in the season. And even if you want to make a trade in the next month, you now have another top prospect who you have as a poker chip, trade block, resources, capital, whatever term you want to use. And Darren Bowen is a throw-in piece of the trade, but I use throw-in piece in air quotes. He's a pitching prospect. The Twins like tall right-handed pitchers, and he's 6'3", not like Bailey Ober tall, but still tall. And the Twins like that kind of build for a pitcher, and he's a throw-in piece, but he's still going to be in the Twins' top 30 prospect list. So the Twins, for an aging Jorge Polanco, who's fit on this roster, he would have been appreciated, but you have a glut of people who can play second base. To get rid of him, who's been aging and banged up but still productive, to get him at his peak value right now, because he wasn't going to be at the same value next year, to get that guy gone, for the Twins to get a little bit of salary back, because the Mariners are taking all of Polanco's salary, plus giving the Twins $8 million in cash. The Twins got so much value. They got 2 prospects. They got a reliever who can be towards the top of their bullpen hierarchy, and they have a starter on the back end of their rotation. Twins roster isn't set. I feel like more moves are coming, but everybody's talking about how much value the Twins got for Jorge Polanco. Polanco's a good player, but most people, if you use the trade machine kind of websites, would reject this trade because the Twins are getting too much value.
So you mentioned that the Twins get to offload some of the salary from Polanco, which means there's some immediate things still left on the table. What is now possible for the Twins with Polanco off the roster?
Well, so the Twins were pretty much, as of yesterday, the Twins were pretty much at the brim. of what their self-imposed payroll limit was because of the Bally contract situation and all that. So they're pretty much at their limit. Now, getting rid of Polanco means you cleared up $10.5 million. And so you cleared up 10.5. You're going to have to, obviously, D. Scalfani is going to make like $4 million. And then you have another $1.5 million from Topa. But then you also get $8 million. So in the sense, the Twins, I mean, whatever that math works out to, the Twins have enough money to go get one nice free agent player. You're not going to go sign Cody Bellinger for like $30 million, but it opens things up to maybe go get a Joey Gallo type. I'm not saying Joey Gallo. He signed a $5 million deal with the Nationals, I think. But you're not going to go get Joey Gallo, but you're going to get you're going to get like a player who's not a superstar, but can be a nice starting player on your team theoretically. And you can go get that guy. You can maybe go get Adam Duvall to be your right-handed hitting corner outfield piece. You can maybe, if you open up the wallets a little bit more, you could maybe go get a Blake Snell on like a 1-year reset kind of deal. There are some options here that the Twins have with their payroll now. It's not a ton of flexibility, but all of a sudden the Twins have enough to where there was a report from John Heyman. They're interested in bringing back Donovan Solano for another year, which I wouldn't be opposed to. So the Twins are pretty much at the brim of their payroll limit. They could only make really minor signings. Now they can at least go get an established and quality veteran bat or arm that's available to them now with the payroll. And now with Polanco cleared up, that's kind of the first domino to fall. I don't think Kepler's getting traded, despite that his contract is aging. I think the Twins love Kepler. I don't think that they want to part with him. Kyle Farmer. Is Kyle Farmer a trade piece? Do other teams need a veteran infielder and he's only making $6.5 million and maybe the market rate's closer to 10? If you want a team that wants to save a little bit of money, Kyle Farmer is potentially a piece you can go get on your, the Twins could trade. Now, I think the Twins will keep Farmer and you can platoon him and Ed Julian because I think Ed Julian is your opening day second baseman. Would you say, Corey?
Yeah, probably. But that was going to be my next question now, because the Twins do have a lot. They've got a lot of infielders. You mentioned Farmer. You mentioned Julian. Obviously, Royce Lewis is going to play in the infield. You've got waiting in the wings with former Major League experience in Jose Miranda. You've got Brooks Lee waiting in the wings. He's just it feels like it's bound and determined to be maybe his year. What is the let's live in the hypothetical. What's the next piece that moves so you can go out and maybe get that dominant pitcher or that big right-handed power outfield bat that you want? Somebody else is maybe gone here, right? You can't live with all of these pieces and allow people to just rot in the minors, right?
Right. And there's a case to be made for some of them. You don't need to get rid of everybody, so there's only one specific person. Like, you don't need to trade Julian because you like Brooks Lee at second base. Like, you do want to have a little bit of depth because, as the Twins learned at first base, even though it was Kirilloff's for most of the season, that still was a position that was iffy. Joey Gallo played a lot there. Jose Miranda played a little bit there. Donovan Solano played a lot there. You want some depth, but you're right. You don't want guys to just sit in AAA. Matt Wallner kind of suffered from that last year due to Joey Gallo taking up a lot of spots in left field. And Matt Wallner came up and was incredible last year for the Twins. So you don't want to have that situation. But I also think that there are some pieces you can move. You can move a Kyle Farmer. If you really want to go get that top of the rotation starting pitcher, not necessarily an ace, but a guy who maybe is a 2-starter on a really good team, you're going to need to give up something good. Now that you have another prospect in your farm system with the guy that the Twins just got, I'm blanking on his name here, with Gabriel Gonzalez and Darren Bowen, now you have 2 more pieces into your farm system. Those are trade chips. Maybe you immediately flip Gabriel Gonzalez and you move him to there's an organization that really likes that prospect. He really likes that prospect. So you trade for him. Now he's in your farm system, and you go to that team and you say, hey, that guy you love? We have him now and we're willing to give him to you so we can get X pitcher. I think that the Twins are still going to have to trade for a starting pitcher. I don't see like a Blake Snell move coming, but Falvey surprised us in years past with the Correa signing. the first time. So there are some things there that they can do. Do you trade Brooks Lee? Like, is he more valuable as a trade chip than if Ed Julian, if you think he can just be your second baseman, and if you think Brooks Lee with Correa at shortstop, Lewis at third base, and that looks like that's going to be cemented there. Falvey's kind of said Lewis is going to stay at third. Now, all of a sudden, maybe, like you said, Miranda, is he a guy that platoons at first base with Kirilloff? Is he, first base is pretty much going to be Miranda's position. He's a little slow he's basically kind of reserved to being a corner infielder at this point in his career. So I think that there's a lot of different ways the Twins can go. But overall, I think if you look at your trade pieces, it's probably, you're not trading Walker Jenkins, who's your top prospect, and it depends on how you feel about Brooks Lee and Ed Julian. I think Ed Julian's a major leaguer. I think you already know he can contribute. I don't think there's any rush to trade him. I think that the Gabriel Gonzalez and Brooks Lee, if the Twins want to make a trade, they're going to need to give up one of those two guys. And I think the Twins getting a top 5 prospect in their farm system means that now they have a little bit more flexibility to trade away from the top echelon of the minors.
Lots of fun stuff, lots of hypotheticals to talk about with the Twins, and we're obviously gonna, as things start to happen, we're a couple of weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. Still, there's going to be some moving and shaking here for the Twins over the next month or month plus probably, and then obviously we've got a trade deadline that happens in the middle of the season. So I think there's going to be some fun stuff still to happen. We though should move on, CJ, because we've got some hypothetical other things that are worth mentioning.
One last thing I should mention about the Polanco thing before we move on to our last thing is this is like, as we know with Falvey, when they unloaded Josh Donaldson's contract to get back Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez, he's not like a one trade guy, we're done. This doesn't feel like a move to be like, well, our off season is done now. This feels like a move to set up another move. So it'll be fun to see where that domino falls. But yeah, let's talk a little Vikings now.
Go ahead. I know you got all the details here. I can't remember what they are.
Okay, so there was a report in the St. Paul Pioneer Press from Charlie Walters. He's kind of their insider a little bit there. He's kind of the guy who comes up with he's the classic guy who's got the Sunday column that just has a bunch of little tidbits, like little just crumbs that you can kind of just insert for yourself. And the thing that has been making the rounds over this early week has been the fact of Kirk Cousins and what he's looking for in his contract. And I want to find the official quote here. So this is from Charlie Walters of the St. Paul Pioneer Press. The buzz now is that it will take $90+ million guaranteed for the next 2 years for Kirk Cousins, despite that he's not yet fully recovered from Achilles surgery in November. To sign the free agent quarterback, Kirk Cousins. If that's the case, he certainly won't get that from the Vikings. Corey, do you think Kirk Cousins camp is asking, like just on a gut level, do you think 290 is what they're looking for, which would be $45 million a year, fully guaranteed? And do you think, and my thing is with this, do you think that that's credible? Do you think that this report is credible? And secondly, if it is credible, what do the Vikings do? And if you're Kwesi, what do the Vikings do?
Is there any reason to think that it isn't credible?
That's my thing it feels like that's something that he would ask, but Kirk Cousins mentioned taking the hometown discount potentially on that kind of locker clean out day. And it depends.
So that would mean he'd be willing to take a discount off of 2 years, $90 million. So what do you do, right? That's your next question. If you're the Vikings, I mean, if it's 2 years, $90 million, I don't care if the report's credible or not. It is, by the way. I don't know. But like the Vikings aren't doing that. The Vikings are not doing that. That's him asking for what he thinks he deserves. This is a classic Kirk Cousins bit. He's always asked for what he thinks he deserves, and it's pretty much always worked out for him. This is a part of the Kirk Cousins story. When he retires, the one of the chapters of that Kirk Cousins book is going to be how he is the guy who started this ball rolling on getting quarterbacks guaranteed money and long-term guaranteed contracts. It's him. He is the guy who got it going. So the fact that he's asking for this is not a big surprise. I can only answer the question really, I guess, by asking, what is the number that you would give him if it's not 2 years for 90, so 45 million a year? Would you do 2 for 80?
Well,
would
and
you
that's
do
the thing.
2 for 75? Would you do 2 for 70 at 35 mil a year? Because that feels okay, doesn't it?
Well, because remember, there were reports last year that Kirk Cousins was willing to take less money than Daniel Jones's total number, but also he wanted all that money to be fully guaranteed, whereas Daniel Jones does not have a fully guaranteed contract. As of right now, Daniel Jones is going to make $35.5 million in 2024. He'll make $30 million in 2025, and in 2026, he's going to make $46.5 million, according to Spotrac. But 290, that's 2 years. That's a 45 mil a year. That's probably what the going rate for a veteran quarterback who's proven he can be successful in the NFL is. But for me, I'm just not going to pay that money, because here's the thing with the Vikings. I know that there's a way. There are people on social media who are saying there's a way the Vikings can make this entire thing work. All they have to do is just sign Jefferson to this number and Kirk to this number and Danielle Hunter to this number. And then you just make sure you work out these bonuses and you cut X player and you do Y. And the salary cap is a myth and all that stuff. The salary cap is not a myth, because you do eventually, you can kick the can down the road all you want, but at some point you do have to, for lack of a better term, pay for your sins in a little bit. You can't just escape the penalty of the salary cap by kicking the can down the road, because at some point the piper has to come due. Is that how people use that expression? But but the point is that with all of this, I don't know. I'd be willing to pay Kirk Cousins, because I'll look up what he's making now, but I got to be, if the going rate, and it probably is that $40 to $45 million range, and maybe this is a negotiation, and maybe he's assuming the Vikings are going to work them down a little bit. But if it's 290 or Cousins walks, I'm going to say enjoy Pittsburgh, Kirk Cousins. Enjoy Atlanta. I don't know.
So let's take the Kirk Cousins perspective on this, because I like you feel it feels like a lot of money. But just for argument's sake, let's just look at the NFC. Okay. Who's a better quarterback, Kirk Cousins or Jordan Love? Jordan Love proved a lot this past season,
right?
But Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback right now. Who's better, Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff? Jared Goff has proven a lot in his time in Detroit. I think you'd pick Kirk Cousins over Jared Goff. Who's a better quarterback, Kirk Cousins or what's his face in Chicago, Fields? Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Fields. You're right, exactly. But go through the NFC. Is Kirk Cousins a better quarterback than Brock Purdy? Yeah, I think probably, right?
Right.
Is he a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield? Yeah, probably. Is he a better quarterback than Geno Smith? Yeah, probably. Is he a better quarterback than Derek Carr? Yes. Is he a better quarterback than Bryce Young? Yes. Is he a better quarterback than – keep going. He's the best quarterback in the NFC, probably. That is also if you don't count that he's older and he just tore his Achilles.
And
so from his perspective, he's – name the quarterbacks that are better than him.
Right.
He's top 10 for sure. He's probably top 7 quarterback.
Right.
Legitimately.
Right.
So if that's the going rate for a top 7 quarterback, you might think it's weird that it's Kirk Cousins, but it is Kirk Cousins.
No, and it is. And that is the going rate for a quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins is perfectly in a comfortable position from his negotiating perspective. I just think, and it's not so much a Kirk Cousins issue as it is just, we already kind of know what we have with Kirk Cousins. And I know that people are saying, well, if Kirk never got hurt, the Vikings would the Vikings have made the NFC Championship game? Because I get that defense had to deal with some bad quarterback play, but that defense fell apart. It ran out of gas. Like, there's just these things of like, it might just be time for the Vikings to fully. The Vikings were laying the groundwork for Kirk to be gone last year. They were laying that groundwork, and it feels like that's where it's headed. And I just don't know. I know that Kirk Cousins was playing some good football, but Kirk Cousins is very up and down with the football over the course of a season, as we all kind of know. And he was the starting quarterback when the Vikings started 1-4. So like, there's all like, as I love Kirk, this isn't like a Kirk's bad, Kirk sucks kind of thing. This is just I'm just to the point where I don't know if the salary cap, I know it can work and you can keep some of those other guys. And I know that you have to draft better, and the Vikings drafted better it wasn't so much that Kirk was clogging up the cap. The Vikings stunk at drafting basically since Kirk Cousins got here, outside of picking Justin Jefferson. But that's the thing. It's going to be, you need to reload a little bit. You need some salary cap space to fill in some of those cracks. And also a rookie quarterback just to maybe reset the franchise a little bit. But that's the thing. The Vikings may be a little scarred from how bad the quarterback play was in the second half of the season. And to go, maybe we didn't appreciate Kirk enough, and maybe we need to just go and let him finish this thing out. I'm just ready for, I think, the Kirk Cousins experiment to be done. I'm not saying that the Vikings can't win if he comes back, but I just think with that number, I think that number is fair to Kirk Cousins. I just don't know if it's in the Vikings' best interest in the long term, and really maybe not even in the short term.
So just for fun here, you can throw anybody in who you think I'm missing, but Mahomes, Burrow, Rodgers, Allen, and Lamar, I think you would all put ahead on a list of quarterbacks ahead of Kirk Cousins. On a same on the same tier, you would put probably like a Dak. You would put probably CJ Stroud now. You'd probably put Trevor Lawrence at the bottom of that tier, with Kirk at the top of that tier.
Justin Herbert's probably towards the top of that tier.
Justin Herbert goes in that top tier. I forgot about him, and he's got a Harbaugh coaching him. So if you put Herbert, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 quarterbacks, and then it's
honestly the way Jared Goff played, I'd put him in that tier with Kirk Cousins.
Goff would go right in that second tier. I think I would, and this is getting into some nitty gritty and subjectiveness, but like, if you're going to have, if those other guys, those 6 guys are tier 1, I think you start tier 2 with Kirk Cousins.
He's towards that top.
Totally. He totally is.
He's a good quarterback.
I don't know, man.
It's more of just a franchise viability, and it'll be interesting. Yeah. I think 2 years is interesting, but it's not that the Vikings after 2 years are going to be done with it. It's that the Vikings will sign him for 2 years, 45, and they're going to find a way to kick all those cans down the road, which means that in 5 years, all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins is going to account for $5 million on the salary cap in 2029 when he's been retired or is towards the end. Because right now, the Vikings have a cap hit of $4 million. They have a cap hit this year of Kirk Cousins of $28.5 million. In 2025, $10.25 million. In 2026, $4 million. In 2027, $4 million. So, and I know that they can be restructured and things can be changed and they can kick that can down the road again. But my point is they keep constantly kicking the can down the road. And you're playing New Orleans Saints football where they're constantly always finagling through the salary cap. But like, to what cost? New Orleans is a franchise that has some good players like the Vikings do, and their quarterback situation is different. Cousins is miles better than Carr, but also they're a franchise that's kind of stuck in that middle ground too, and they don't really have the flexibility to make up for things. So it's that kind of thing of where I'm getting at, of maybe that kind of gives you an opportunity to start fresh. But at the end of the day, if the Vikings just draft better, then things turn out a little bit differently. But who knows? I think that's probably good.
But they're not drafting better. You know what I mean? Like, until they prove that they can draft better, that is right. A part of all of this. And of course, they're going to think that they're going to draft better and that they've been unlucky with their draft picks, which might also be true. Right. But that is a thing to consider. It's like, and people sometimes complain about coaching. Well, if players executed the plays, then coaching wouldn't be a thing you would talk about. Or the players have never executed this play, quit calling those plays. Like, you have to adjust your philosophy on what is the actual outcome of what's happening. So if you're not going to draft better, then you got to have Cousins as your quarterback.
Right. Exactly. Well, and it's on the Vikings haven't drafted. Like, they've hit on Addison, they've hit on Jefferson, they've hit on a few, but there hasn't been like a, whoa, the Vikings nailed like 4 key pieces of this franchise. They haven't had a 2015 draft in 10 years. And I get that that's probably a once in a 10-year draft.
Since 2015.
Right, exactly. When they drafted Kendricks and Hunter and Diggs and all of those guys that became part of your franchise. But there hasn't been like outside of Metellus, there hasn't really been a guy who you draft that all of a sudden is like, whoa, he can turn into something. Like, there's just very few of those developmental pieces that even towards the back end of the Zimmer era felt like those were more few and far between. But like in the peak of the Zimmer era, there was all of a sudden like, whoa, this guy was a 7th rounder. And all of a sudden he's like a quality starter in like 3 years. And there hasn't been that process. So anyway, but I think that that's a good spot for this conversation to end. And we'll talk, I'm sure, more about Kirk Cousins. We're not done talking about him quite yet. So that's ready to go. So, all right, that has been the morning sports desk for Tuesday, January 30th.